So, a dissertation proposal is the first three chapters of your dissertation, and this is what you're proposing to your committee that you want to do. This is the research that you want to conduct. So, it includes those three chapters. Everything's written in future tense because this is what you're going to do in the near future. Um, you go in, so you submit it to committee. They have about 2 weeks typically to review it, and then you have a proposal defense. And during that defense, it's you plead your case for why that you get to conduct this study, and your committee gives you a lot of feedback to help you improve um, your proposal so that you have an easier time collecting and analyzing the data. That's the most important part. Never again will you have so many experts looking at your work, giving you feedback, helping you approve or improve this dramatically. And so really you should take proposal very seriously, um, because it's a chance for you to have the best study possible, um, which really makes it easier once you actually get that permission and start moving forward. Also, once the proposal is approved, you can then submit for IRB approval to start collecting data. Um, Another thing to remember is once your proposal is approved and signed off on committee, you can't make changes to your research questions or to your methodology. Sometimes things come up and things have to be changed for various reasons. You have to go back to committee and get those things approved. You can't just go and change a research question or decide you want to, use a different instrument without going back to, committee and clearing that once it's been signed off in proposal. So let's just take a little look at these first three chapters. What you're going to be doing this week is a very, very, very rough draft of your proposal. You will not know all of this information now, but what I want you to start doing is having an idea of what goes into the proposal, so that as you have conversations with your advisor over the coming weeks and months, you can ask much better questions of them, because you'll start to have an idea of the direction that you're going. So your conversations will be more meaningful. Instead of just saying, I don't know what I want to do, here's what I'm thinking about, you can say, I'm looking at this, at X, Y, and Z, and you'll have some things kind of fleshed out. So I hope that's helpful. You cannot write your official proposal until you have passed comprehensive exams. So what we're doing now is just getting a rough draft. We're going to get some feedback and see the direction that this might take. And so chapter 1 is the introduction. So this is why your study is important. What's going on in the field to make you, interested in doing this. And I've kind of given some little, this should be about 1 to 2 paragraphs, 2 to 5 paragraphs, guidelines. And again, I don't expect you to fully have all of this in a week's time. What I want you to do is just start thinking about, bullet listing, adding some sentence, writing a problem statement, maybe not, in a few sentences, maybe not 2 to 5 paragraphs at this time. The research, the purpose, why are you doing this? Who would be interested in reading this? Your research questions, plug those in there and describe why the study would be beneficial to either your population that you're going to be working with or in general. And then this kind of ties in when you do the lit review. You're going to identify, gaps in the literature, areas that haven't been thoroughly covered already, and that might be why your study is significant. And then any limitations to your study, you can add those in there, and then a definition of terms. Just because, if you're in IDT and you're doing something with instructional design or educational technology, don't make assumptions that everyone on your committee is going to understand all that. A lot of times, especially if we have a methodologist from a different program area, they might not know those terms. If we pull in a teacher ed person from ICL, whoever we're pulling in, don't just assume that they understand that. Do this clear definition of terms. And even if, think about the larger audience that may be reading this one day, or will be reading this one day, they need to understand, because sometimes when you use a term, different people something different may come to mind when that term is used. And so just make sure you clearly define any major vocabulary there. Chapter 2 is that review of literature. And so as I kind of mentioned in the assignment, if you took the Lit Review class with me, which almost all of you did, you have a literature review already written out. If your topic is the same, awesome. You can use that same lit review. I gave you feedback at the end, so make sure you've done, made all those corrections and changes. There may be some newer studies that have come out because that was a year ago. Check and revise. If your topic may have changed just a little bit, you can just go back and modify those different sections. So if it fits, plug it in. If it doesn't fit, you are not expected to write a lit review for this class. The purpose of this is just to outline the kinds of things that you need to include in that literature review. So if you have a completely different topic now, just go back and look at the other lit review that you wrote and make sure you understand kind of those same things, same components that went into it, and just kind of do a rough outline of the lit review. Now, if you didn't take that class and you haven't written a lit review, I cannot stress to you enough. You need to start reading articles now and working on a lit review with your advisor to get ready for this, because that's something that's going to take you some time to crank out. And then chapter 3 is your methodology, and this is going to be kind of the biggest component and where I need you to spend a lot of time thinking. And hopefully this will overlap with some things that you're doing in your other courses, especially if you've chosen a qualitative study. And so your site of research, where are you going to be conducting this? And remember, a lot of times in research we use pseudonyms, and so instead of the University of Memphis, you can say, River City University or something, similar. Just use pseudonyms there. At this time, because we're not publishing it, you don't have to think up pseudonyms because it's not going out. But just remember, in the future, names of places and things are oftentimes you use pseudonyms. So describe, where it's a 4-year institution, it has this many students, this many faculty, blah blah blah. And so really do a thick, rich description of the site where you think you'll be doing your research. And if you don't know yet where you're going to be doing, the site that you're going to be doing your research or the different sites, just kind of draft out where you think. You want an urban setting, you want a company that has over 5,000 employees. Just think in general terms, and then we can start narrowing that down with feedback. The participants, who are they? So who are you going to be recruiting to participate in your study? Your research intervention, if you're going to have an intervention, either a unit, instructional design unit that you have people go through, you can describe that there. But you may or may not have a specific intervention. So that's why it says if applicable. So just think about, what are you going to do? What treatment are you going to have? So if you're quantitative, then obviously you've got something that's going to happen to the people in your population. They're going to learn something, they're going to do something, and then you're going to see what happened. The instrumentation, so start thinking about this, and we're going to cover instrumentation a lot more later this semester, this summer. And so but this is something that you should start thinking about. And if you happen to already know and have copies, you can include them in the appendix. If you don't, then and I really don't expect that you do, but you can just start thinking about, these are the types of things I need. Are you going to have a survey? Do you need an interview protocol? What are you going to need? What instruments are you going to need to collect your data? And then the procedures. What are you going to do? How are you going to recruit participants to get them to join your study? Are you going to email them? Are you going to post flyers? What are you going to do to recruit participants? A needs assessment. If you are going to do a needs assessment, and not all studies require this, but if you do, that's where this goes, the needs assessment there. What you're going to do actually in the study, so what your participants are going to do, that's called the intervention. And so mention it again here. And everything in here is, if another person in another state picked up your dissertation, they should be able to replicate it, your study. So that's how much detail actually has to go in here. How are you going to collect data? If you have a survey, are you going to call people in and give them paper and pencil survey? Or is it going to be an electronic survey? That's the type of thing here. How are you going to, to collect that data and get it back? And then how are you going to analyze your data? And so you can start talking in great detail about the quantitative or qualitative methods that you're going to use to align or to analyze that data. The limitations, These are things that limit your study. So these are, difficulties that you might have. And then the delimitation is the boundaries of the study, what you're going to do and what you're not going to do. So, for example, if you're going to do a study on social media, you can say, I'm going to talk about, my delimitations is that I'm going to talk about social media platforms such as Facebook or Twitter. I am not going to be including things like Pinterest or blah, blah, blah. So just explain um, how you delimit what you're doing. And then any biases or subjectivity. So something like, the students, my participants are students in my own class. Something like that might cause you bias. Um, and that doesn't mean that it's not okay. You just have to disclose it. So those are the kinds of things um, you're thinking about. And I know this is a very brief overview, but again, this is supposed to be a very rough draft. The point is just to get you thinking about all of these components that have to go in there, what you understand, what you don't understand, what these areas that you need more clarification. If you don't understand what limitations are, that's where your questions need to be. What are limitations? What are the limitations of my study? Start thinking about the terms that you're using, which ones might be clear or unclear to others reading your work. Um, what kind of work shape is your lit review in, and where do you need to go to get that ready? And then with the methodology, this is when you really start thinking about, and based on your research questions, how would you, think about your research questions and what do you need to do to answer those questions? And so that's kind of where you start selecting, is it a quantitative or qualitative or mixed method study, and why are you choosing that method? All these things. And so this is where you propose what you want to do, provide that rationale for your decisions, and really start thinking about all of these things. So I'm not expecting a fully formed um, proposal. I'm expecting a rough draft of these are the ideas. This is the direction that you're headed. And one more thing I do want to point out, because I've said in here in the introduction 1 to 2 paragraphs, 2 to 5 paragraphs, those types of things. I don't expect that much for this rough draft. That is when you actually do your proposal for real. Those are kinds of some things you can shoot for at that time. So anyway, happy drafting, and I look forward to seeing the direction that your studies are taking.